Okay, let's move over to the next discussion. Abdul Hakim said he used to work for JLL. Are there any other JLL people in the room? One or two. Okay, now JLL tells us in a report that while transparency is improving in sub-Saharan Africa, it's failing to match rising expectations, correct? Apparently, Nigeria is one of the countries that has seen vast improvement in the area thanks to greater data availability, improved valuation standards, and government digitization initiatives. We are seeing strides being made in the use of technology like blockchain in countries like Kenya, Rwanda, and Ghana. Nigeria, slightly slow to catch on to that, but like I said, the real estate sector knows that this technology is important, and we just need to take note of it and get our heads around it. So let's talk data. And our moderator for this session, Dolapo Omidire, founder, chief executive officer, Estate Intel Nigeria. Is he here? And he will be joined by Erejuwa Gbadebo, CEO, IREP. Abdul Hakim is already on the stage. Osage Alfred, Director, Real Estate Management Services, North Court Real Estate. Emeka Ofor, Director, Strategic Comms, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. Okay, Dolapo is here. Thank you, thank you. Over to you.
Okay, so over to me. Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're talking about. Today we're talking about data and transparency. It's a topic that I think we all agree is one of the major challenges that's facing the African real estate market. Across the continent, there's a lack of a central source of data points for actionable and effective decision making, and I think it's something that everybody across the turnkey real estate solution, the developers, the occupiers, the facility managers, the service providers, everybody. It's something that we all want to see solved. This is the second edition of this panel discussion, and I'm going to try and make sure that we talk about things on the other side of the spectrum. So I'll throw it around a bit. But before we start, I will allow our panelists just introduce themselves and the companies that they work for.
Abdul Hakim Sadiq, Zama Real Estate.
Erejuwa Gbadebo, International Real Estate Services, part of the Alphamid Group.
Hello everyone, Ayo Ibaru, North Court Real Estate. I'm standing in for Osage, who couldn't make it today.
Greetings, my name is Emeka Ofor. I work with Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission.
Okay, so to start off with, I think what we typically do in these discussions about data, which we've had at many other events, is just talk about, okay, this is what's wrong, this is why we're not getting anywhere. But I want us to take a different approach today in thinking, okay, the data is not available, the market is very opaque, as the very nice report that JLL produced shows. But what do we think is the ideal structure that should be in place? So let's think with the end in mind. What systems and structures need to be in place for a data-rich and transparent market. And I'd like you guys to think about the asset managers, the owners of assets, the governments, the regulators, and the service providers. What system and structure needs to be in place for that type of system to be available in Nigeria? I'd like to start off with Hakim, since you just gave us that lovely presentation.
I think I'll just start with governance. I think it's an issue regarding policy implementation. We do have a lot of policy within the real estate market space. There's just very little regulation and implementation of these policies. I think if we have a governance or a system in place that can actually drive these processes and empower the market to make better business decisions, then it really helps. And also from the private sectors, I think a lot more effort needs to go into research. There are just very few firms that are able to collaborate together and provide us with necessary data that we can use to make investment decisions, or even just to know what's going on in the market.
Erejuwa?
Well, we as a sector, we tend to always say, oh, government policies this, but I have to ask myself, why is it that we don't want these transactions transparent? And you then have to sometimes go back to the clients. I've had call for people saying, you know, oh, we need this, we need that, do you have tenants? And I feel like saying they don't grow on trees, and if you do not allow me to state what the issue is or what it is we're trying to sell, how do we sell it? So we then have to go back to, why is it that that a lot of clients don't actually want the transactions transparent? And you then come back to this whole thing of, okay, are we laundering money through our real estate? I mean, we as a nation, okay, I'm speaking mainly for Nigeria, but I do know a little bit about Ghana being part from there. As a people, we tend not to want to, as it were, let everybody know everything about us. And then that, you know, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't want people to know about us, but we want to find out about the next person, but the next person doesn't want anybody to know about them. So we are loath ourselves to want to actually record the transactions that we're involved in. And again, it then comes back to, okay, government, look, as far as policies are concerned, I think there are enough policies in this country to actually make this country work. So it's not the policies, it's the enforcing of the policies. So if, as a people, because we don't necessarily want to let everybody know, quote unquote, our business, do we go about registering our properties? And then when it comes to wanting advisory, like you said, in order to make a business decision, the information just isn't there. So really, I think that we need to kind of be a little bit self-examining here, and not necessarily, because who is the government? We are the government. So really, if we're not prepared to do it, why should we then say, oh, the government should this and the government should that? They're not going to do it unless we put the pressure on them. And if we don't put the pressure on them in the right ways, it's never going to happen.
No, I definitely agree with the points that you've made. What has happened in a market like Nigeria, for example, is that over the past, let's say, 10 to 15 years, as the market players who are active are becoming less politically affiliated, or it's not just the HNIs or the local investors, the market is starting to get that, is getting the sophistication increasing essentially. And the type of investors who are active actually need to make data-driven decisions, which is why these types of conversations are coming out a lot more. People need the data much more than you did in 1999, because you now have the big institutionals playing in the market. Ayo, do you have anything to add?
Thank you very much. Just to throw my own two pence, as they say, on that. You know, let's cast our mind back to before we had the telecom sector and all of that, and we had Nitel then, and then MTN came in and paid what they paid, and then the industry has just grown ever since. So recently, we know of the sale of 9mobile and what have you, and I think the point to note here is an economy benefits from a transparent market. It's very central. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to say it in the way the world works today. If your market isn't transparent, it's just going to be difficult. I mean, just imagine us trying to run our businesses today with the lines we had, then. She's laughing. So I think we haven't really sat down to look at the value we can get as a nation, as an industry, when data is out there and available for everyone, to see. That brings me to my next point, which is I think, prioritization of data products. So, we just got it delivered now, but on your way out, when you're going for lunch, we have this Lagos retail research report we did, just 2 pages. I mean, it's free for everyone, but it's what we have come to realize, like you just said, people need the data. People are looking for data, and it's important to making our market more attractive, making our market stronger. So I think, understanding that there is value in this thing and then creating products around that will in the end make our markets stronger.
Okay. Emeka, I just want to take a slightly different perspective. I guess from the position of somebody that's promoting Nigeria as an investment destination, what sort of challenges do you face for people who might be interested in investing in the property sector? Are there any data requests that people are asking for that they're not seeing? What are your thoughts?
Thank you. Speaking from the perspective that you identified, I think one of the major challenges we face in promoting investment in Nigeria is what we are discussing. Data transparency, access to data, access to information that will help investors take better informed decisions. We all know that water flows through the path of least resistance. And when these prospective investors or investors want to invest in an economy, they look at several factors. They look at several locations. And if we are talking about location, they first of all deselect. For example, they say, well, we have 190 countries to invest. We don't want to go to countries A, B, C, D because we don't know anything about them. And that is the information we are talking about. And then when they drill down, they ask themselves the question, okay, well, we have 20 other countries that have what we want. How do we select the country we want to invest in? And then they will begin another process of creating a short list. The implication for us, I'm glad to hear that we are improving our transparency in Nigeria, but access to information, data that will help these investors make decisions is a major problem. And it's something that we all should work at improving, especially those of us in this particular sector. NIPC, as an agency of government, has been trying to put in place standards, what we call the NICPS, Nigeria Investment Certification Program for States. This product or project tries to make states better prepared to accept investments. For example, we are currently promoting 3 standards: the information standard, the property standard, and then the marketing standards. It's one thing to have some of these standards, but the investments will ultimately sit in the states. We've looked at the challenges being faced by the real estate market. The real estate are in the states ultimately. Somebody said something about why federal government should be involved in that. So ultimately it's the states that will take charge. So by trying to make sure that states understand these standards and are better positioned to provide them and answer those questions and provide those kind of properties that meet the needs of the investors is an issue. So to resolve that problem, we set up that program. And some states are already taking advantage of that. The recent ranking that we are talking about came out of the fact that maybe Lagos State did something significant. By the time we have all the other states doing something in that sector or in that area, it will make life easier for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emeka. I wanted to bring out one of the points that you made, how prospective institutional investors, whether coming from Asia, North America, wherever, might cancel out a potential investment destination just because they don't have the data. And I think it's important to even distinguish your 2 prospective investors. Some have enough conviction to decide, look, I want to go into Africa, we're going to do it. Let's go, let's fly down, we're going to hire some consultants, we're going to do the research. But there are hundreds more, thousands who are sitting at desks in anywhere from Japan to Eastern Europe to mainland Europe, wherever, that need to click on a button on a computer somewhere and just say, okay, is this something that I might consider? But we don't have that data. I mean, it's something that we at Estate Intel we're trying to do. We're putting up an online platform. We actually just launched an application that has in-depth data on hotel markets, hospitality markets rather, the office market, the listed property market, etc. So I think each of us, whether it's publishing reports rather, or launching a platform, we're all trying to help that and ensure that we get as many investors active in the market. I'm going to touch on the next topic, which is often very contentious. It is sharing. We always talk about sharing data. Oh, okay, you guys have all this transactional information. Let's make the market better. Give it out for free or share it with all your fellow market participants. I want to ask maybe Arejua, what do you think is reasonable and how do you think a system like that can work?
At the
bearing,
moment,
okay, sorry.
at the moment, I think that's difficult, and the reason I say that is because for a lot of companies, the information they have is their intellectual capital. Because it's not shared on like a public platform, available for all to see, and everybody is obligated to put into it, there's kind of a reticence about letting that information go out. But what we're beginning to find is that a number of companies, ours included, are trying to put out sort of quarterly reports or biannual reports and inviting commentary and feedback, because something is coming out of this conversation where we talk about having data. And I'm thinking, do we just want data for data's sake? Should it be real data or fake data? You know, we say a lot about fake news these days, but the question is, anybody can put out data. How real is the data? And so therefore, even though we can't say, okay, I'm going to share everything about all my transactional data on a platform and you can click on it. And it's really funny you say that, because I went on a database and I clicked the time that we bought our house in the UK. And there it was, including the price and the people we bought. I was gobsmacked. And this, we're talking back in the early 90s, but that's a different story. But what I'm saying is that if when people put out their research, we invite commentary. Oh, you know, here's our research. It would be good to have your comments. And people then feel that, okay, if somebody's willing to have, if someone is willing to elicit commentary back and you maybe say, oh, you know what, Mrs. Gbadebo, this information you put out is not quite correct. And then the following report that comes out, there is a correction in the next report that, oh, in our last report we put this out and we've still found out that, well, we've since found out this and the other. Then what then happens is that if somebody needs information, they will come to you and say, oh, listen, you know, seems like you have your finger on the pulse. Or others may feel, oh, you know, we can collaborate with this. What we have, or what I find is, somebody mentioned it earlier, that real estate is a function, apart from the capital markets, but also about relationship. The only way people are going to, and in the market in which we are, and when I say we, I'm trying my best not to talk about just Nigeria, but actually it's the market I know best, and Lagos probably, is to actually find ways to collaborate on an individual level. So if, for example, as the head of one company, you feel confident that the head of another company in the same industry as you is a person of integrity with whom you can sit and share information, and you know that this information is not going to then be used against you, then you're going to find that sort of thing happen. You're going to find the sharing of information. And as time goes on, as the big players, the likes of the Actises and co, actually share their information and people see them progressing, and then the next tier come up and think, okay, maybe this is a way to do this. Then it might filter all the way down to the man who sells his house in Lekki and actually wants to invest in a property in Ikoyi or something. But at the moment, I don't think it's that easy. That's my personal view.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Hello? So I definitely agree. I think when you look at people who have been active in the Nigerian market for the past 10 years, for example, or 5 years, 2 years, whatever, and have been able to amass a large database of transactional information, that type of data is a weapon. It is not something that should be distributed for free. That's what I've worked on for the past year. This is what I'm going to use to give me that edge. How that differs from the more established markets is that edge is usually maybe 10% of the work. 90% of the information is usually available to most market participants who can either, whether pay for a subscription for a big platform or just based on the regular transparency of the market, you can get access to the regular stuff. And just because, say, in the UK, CBRE is working on a client or working with a particular client for some disposals, JLL is working with another, X is working with another, they get particular and special insight into that transaction. And that gives them that special edge. How that differs in the market, it's 90-10. So 10% is generally available, it's very small. So the people who are actually working on the major transactions can get that edge, which is, I mean, it can be good, and it's fantastic if you are the one with the edge. But I think what we need to do is ensure that the base of the market and everybody has enough information to be able to guide investors and do more.
But isn't that edge only during the transaction? Because immediately after the transaction, all the information then becomes public knowledge.
So,
to an extent.
yes,
Or
to
what
an
do you find?
extent, correct. There's still some particular things, whether it's rental or confidential information that the person would keep. Okay. Ayo, did you have anything to
I
touch
just
on?
wanted to add that, coming from the last 10 years, coming from the last 10 years, we have more data available than we did before. But what we are now finding is it's one thing to have the data points, but then again, clients are increasingly looking for the kind of insights you as an individual or a company will bring out. So while some are at the level of hoarding data, some have left that level. And the value add now is in your ability to extract deductions that are accurate from the data points. And as our madam here, Rejua, rightly said, once the transaction is done, the data points change. Rental values right now are different from what they were first quarter last year and the year before. And so those things change. So I just thought to add that.
Okay. Hakeem, what role do you think tech is playing in the property sector? And can you provide some technical examples that are particular to real estate?
Technology, I think, can play a huge part in real estate, most especially in the ability to provide data and interpret data to make sense to the user. I think with the likes of predictive analysis, these are tools that people can use to analyze literally how people function. Everything we do literally is almost online. We shop online, we buy things online, we book online. These are data. This is information that you can use to track and even subconsciously motivate people to make decisions. So I think technology has a huge opportunity, especially in a developing market like Nigeria. So for instance, with us, what we're doing is if you come to our portal, we don't just let you go. We follow you to everywhere you go. You know, we use tools that actually track how you function, what you do, and things like that. We do that. So, but these are things, it may sound creepy.
Sure you're not chasing people away from the website?
But this is how we target people. This is how we help people make good decisions, you know. So definitely technology does have a huge potential in this market, absolutely.
Okay. For Emeka, I wanted us to talk about outside data. What do you think might be a hindrance for Nigeria as a real estate investment destination? What challenges do you think might be there outside data?
Maybe I'll use 1 minute to talk about data, then I can veer off. I think data is money, and it's very important that we share data. But also, it's also important that we extract intelligence out of data. And by extracting intelligence out of data, it means we can even make more money out of what we have available. So I agree that there is no point holding data. What we have done in NIPC is to use technology to pass out information. Yesterday, 2 days ago, we released what we call the report of investment announcement, which shows investor interest in Nigeria. I'm glad to announce that out of the $73 billion worth of investment announcement made in favor of Nigeria, 25% of that figure is in the real estate sector. It shows that foreigners are beginning to get interested more in investing in Nigeria. And I think it's as a result of the work everybody is doing, the data transparency we spoke about. And then we also introduced an online platform, what we call investment opportunities profiling platform, which you can get from on our website, that allows prospective investors or project promoters to be able to put up their opportunities to NIPC in a modernized format so that we can match opportunities with investments. And that is one thing we are also doing. The other thing we are doing is to publish online as well as online what we call the iGuide, is Investor's Guide. The Investor's Guide gives you costs, processes, procedures of doing business in Nigeria in the key sectors of the economy. You can always access it on our website and then get the information, including the contact persons that you require to help you resolve some of the issues you may have in your sector. And finally, we publish what we call the NIPC Intelligence Newsletter. We publish it 6 days in a week. What we try to do with that document or that publication is to put across to the investing public relevant information that will help them to make better informed decisions. Do I still have time to talk about your question? Okay. So the other challenges we face in the industry, trying to get investors come into Nigeria apart from data, are indeed numerous. Number one, I would like to appeal that the major impediment that we get is the response of Nigerians. We've gone to road shows where we have situations whereby Nigerians will be the one to say negative things about Nigeria. The implication is that if you don't project yourself in a positive manner, it becomes difficult for others to see you in a positive manner. If you say that your property or your real estate is bad, then investors or buyers will not come to buy it. So it's important that we project, because we have positive information about Nigeria that we need to put out there. So I want to appeal to fellow Nigerians, and indeed everybody that listens to us, to focus on the positive things about Nigeria. That does not mean we do not have negatives. We have a lot of negatives, several, but the government is doing a lot to counter them. That's why we have the PEBEC, the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which saw to it some improvements in Nigeria's rankings. We improved in competitiveness ranking, but we moved 10 places forward. We've been told about the JLL's ranking in the real on transparency. We have the, some people will say that maybe 2 years ago we moved 24 places in the ease of doing business because we introduced a lot of reforms. And then this year, we did not move forward. But we actually moved forward in terms of movement, but not in terms of ranking. We moved from 51 to 52. It's insignificant, but it shows that things are being done along those areas. The other challenges we face are that's why I don't want to run away from data, because we did an analysis, we did a survey, and critical among them, what came out very strongly was information. The security was not even very strong in what we had. Then the business environment is key. And that's why PEBEC is working on improving the business environment. Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for just one question. Is there any question or comment? Just one person. All right. And we'd like just one person to answer as well.
Thank you very much. Well done, panel. My name is Roland Igbinoba. Now, okay, if one person is going to answer, I don't know who I should direct this to, but thank God, from Estate Intel to Northcote. Now, the challenge with data is, we have been gathering data. I work with Pising Housing Company. We've been gathering data since 2005, when I left the bank to start real estate advisory. Now, what is important is that if you look through, from the conversations we've had, from machine learning to blockchain to prop tech, all of this is dependent on the root source of data. So, at the secondary level, transactions done by whether Brawl or whether any other commercial real estate person, right? You get the transactions, what is rentals, what is vacancy. But the truth is, if we do not take these conversations to the root source where we get data from, okay, which is the government. And so I wanted to make that point that you can't really take away government. So I think what we need to do, you're talking about sharing data. Now, the cost of doing research, is enormous. I don't know how many of you sitting there has broken even whose business model is in profit today because you're selling data. I don't know. Okay, so we had to set up a foundation to be able to provide residential real estate data. I'll be happy to hear that. So the question is, rather than continue to have these conversations around, let's do this, the reality in the market is that people will continue to hoard their data, except when there are collaborative efforts to be able to get that data out. Thank you.
One person?
Yeah, it was, thank you. Part of it was a comment, but I think, hello? Okay, yes. Part of it was largely a comment, but I think, one, I definitely agree that sharing is a long-run discussion, and asking everybody to throw over their information is hard. What needs to happen is a system that provides an exchange of value for information. So I'm only going to be willing to share something with you if I'm going to get something in return. I can tell you or provide a system that, okay, if you can help me with this comparable data, I'm going to be able to help you with the lease transactions here. That's actually a conversation that we started having with one of the Nigerian bodies for real estate, one of the Nigerian bodies for real estate, where we work and provide general market data, not specific to anybody, but then they are able to share some of their transactional information with us. In terms of a profitable business selling data, when you said it, everybody here looked, that's my question to answer. I think what we are seeing is, I think it's definitely a long-run thing. If we're really key about the market and we're interested in this thing going far, just as how real estate is a long-run business, I think the data one is also a long-run business. Right. If you think about how sophisticated the market is getting, we're not there yet because you still have a lot of people that will throw money at real estate without really needing that data. Didi, I'm coming.
Rejua, 1 minute.
But yeah.
You asked, and it's a very interesting question you asked, and Dolapo has answered it to a large extent. But the point I would then put back to people, how expensive is it for you to actually carry out your real estate development without that data? So we have to flip it on its head. Nigeria, in the scale, if the advanced markets are at 100, we're still at 10 or 5. So really, at the end of the day, if I'm to say, oh, my data earned me this amount, no, I probably can't say that. But people coming and reading my data has led to transactions that have earned me X amount. And going forward, if there becomes a plethora of companies that are giving out data, and this data is challenged backwards and forwards, and you begin to see the true information coming out, it is for the good of the whole industry, which is not dependent on brick and mortar, but more dependent on the capital markets, which themselves are to a large extent dependent on whether or not they can trust the information from the country. So in the long run, that then earns the money. So data for us at the moment is not seen as bread and butter for any company, but just seen as a point of being a differentiator. Does this company give out data that I can read and say, yes, I agree with this, or can I challenge this, and can I understand the integrity of this company from the data that they put out? And then that eventually earns money to the good of all of us.
All right, let's leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our moderator and our panelists as they make their way down. Speaking of advanced markets, Reggie was talking about advanced markets. I know you probably have all heard of a company called WeWork, and many people have mentioned this company in the course of the sessions this morning. It's an American company. Some people call it a tech company. Some people call it a real estate company. It provides shared workspaces for tech startups. Founded 2010. So it's been around for 8 years, and it's managed to reach a valuation of $20 billion in 8 years. And what do? They simply lock in long leases and rent out the space at a premium. And it's crazy to think of just how much one small company has managed to disrupt the global real estate market. They're not yet in Africa. They're all over the world, in Australia, Asia, Europe, America. Imagine if they came here. So after the break, given that, we will be having a discussion on co-working spaces. We'll be continuing that conversation because we are seeing a rise in co-working spaces in Nigeria. Here that now we have about 250, and just a few years ago there was like 20. So in the second room, so not this room, in room number 2, which is the Grand Ballroom, which is where we had the summit last year. If you come out, it's just opposite, you just walk across. We will be starting off with a panel discussion at 2 o'clock, so on co-working spaces. So you don't want to miss that. If you're a developer, an investor, this is an area that you probably want to keep your eyes on. So you want to find out everything you can. Here, we'll be talking about affordable housing, which is always a hot topic in Nigeria. We will have a debate where we'll be bringing together the public sector, private sector, professionals, and the community. The question is, how do we make housing truly affordable for all? Ladies and gentlemen, it's lunchtime, and lunch is courtesy of our lunchtime sponsor, Urban Shelter. We would like you back in this room by 2 o'clock prompt. We will be starting. Remember, we're splitting into 2 rooms, so you can either be here talking about affordable housing, or you can be across the hall, just walk outside, and there they'll be talking about co-working spaces. As you head out, I would like to say thank you once again to our platinum sponsor, Broad Property Group, and to all our exhibitors and all our sponsors. Please make sure to stop and visit our exhibitors as you make your way out. Thank you, and have a good lunch, and see you back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you.